Right. Good evening, everybody. It's me again, that crazy guy with lazyeye.com, also actioninews.com. And we are here live with John Petty, who is running for Hemet City Council against Linda Krupa. And we're trying to give everybody that's running for council an opportunity to be able to sit here on our news platform and be able to put out whatever information they want to the public. Also allowing the public, you can ask questions, and I'm sure John will be more than happy to answer any questions. But before we do ask the questions from the community, we would like for you to sit back, grab you a cup of coffee, and enjoy the show. I'm actually going to I got Rusty Strait over here. Everybody knows who Rusty is, and if you don't, well, you're going to find out who Rusty is very quick. So Rusty's going to help us ask questions about the city council, why you should vote for John Petty, or why shouldn't you vote for John Petty, or why should you vote for whoever. So we're just going to give the opportunity to let John be able to speak on his behalf and hear his campaign. And if you have any questions, we will ask those questions at the end of the live stream when Rusty and I are done. And so if you want, you can continue to ask your questions in the comments below, and I will be watching your comments and I will be throwing them out in the interview as well. Make sure you do share this video as well. I think John Petty has a lot of good points to bring out, and I know he's got a lot of good answers to be answering to you guys. So with further more ado, I'm going to go ahead and let you start off. Rusty, how are you? Oh, by the way, John, thanks for coming over here. And thanks for visiting our studio,
well,
and the floor is yours.
Before we begin, I just wanted to thank you, Eddie, for doing this, because I've been disappointed there hasn't been any community candidate forums in the 5th District for the city of Hemet. And as far as I know, this is the only one that has been offered up, so I appreciate the opportunity. I know the voters are curious about a lot of questions, and I'm here to answer anything that comes my way. So thank you for doing this, and I appreciate you and Rusty being here and facilitating this forum.
Well, that's what we're here for.
Well, first of all, welcome, John.
Thank you, sir.
I'd like to find out your opinion. What is wrong currently, really wrong basically, with the current city council, and perhaps it has been for quite some time?
Well, the council is comprised of 5 members. Of course, my opponent, the incumbent, Linda, has been there for 12 years now. First elected in 2010. I'd say that right now on the city council there is a lack of leadership. I think staff has pretty much been running the show for the most part. I'm told we're going to talk about Measure H today, and I think that's a good example of how the lack of leadership on City Council has affected the performance of various departments in the city. I'm very concerned with the Community Development Department and how destructive it has become in terms of bringing any new business into the city. Of course, crime is not exactly under control as was promised with Measure U. So I'm concerned about that. But to be absolutely direct in answering your question, Rusty, I just think it's a lack of leadership.
Well, I'd like another question. This has to do with her qualifications to run for a 3rd term, because I understand we have a 12-year limit. And how did she get through that loophole?
Well, and I know she was invited here today and I guess declined, but the voters in 2010 had a companion resolution, actually a measure both for term limits and for a cessation of health benefits for city council members. In that election, they elected Linda, but they also said that we don't want any more than 12 years to be served by any council member. That was passed by a margin of 89%. And if you follow local elections, you'll know that you can't get 89% of people to agree on anything. But they agreed back then that 12 years was the maximum. There was a provision at the time that said This will only apply to elections going forward, starting in 2012. And Linda is taking advantage of that provision. But I think the voters were very clear, and I would have hoped that Linda would have respected the intent of the voters and would have called her 12 years enough.
That would have been the proper thing to do. And we're going to get to Measure H in due time. But what actually killed Measure E, which would have tied that up it only, and it'd have to be strictly for safety and that sort of thing. And they let it die. And I always think there's something behind something when something dies like that that's good for the city. Then they brought in something with a Measure U, with a 10-year and a sunset. Now Measure N, and it would go into the general fund, but they promised to use it for safety, which hasn't been the case. And now we have this Measure H, which takes it out of, it has no sunset, and they can do anything they want to it because just going into the general fund with a quote-unquote promise for safety.
Well, there's a lot of moving parts to that question, so let me try and address your first part. Measure E was in 2016, and that was the June primary. That was introduced, as you said, that would have limited any tax revenue to be spent only on police and fire. When you have a special tax like that, it requires a 2/3 majority to pass. They did not receive that in June of 2016. So they brought back a general tax in November of 2016. That was Measure U. Measure U, as a general tax, only requires a 50% plus 1 to pass. So it's a much easier threshold to pass. However, when you bring a general tax, it allows the city council, as you said, to do whatever they want to do with the money. It's not restricted to police and fire. So in anticipating that problem, the council at the time adopted a resolution. I believe it was 4703. Companion resolution that said, very specific, and if your viewers, Eddie, want to Google City of Hemet Resolution 4703, they can probably read it themselves. But in a sense, what it said was, we're making a contract with the voters of Hemet. If you pass this tax, we promise that we're only going to use the proceeds of the tax on police and fire. And that's right in the resolution. It said some other things in the resolution. It said things like, by 2019, we have to have a 1.2 officers per 1,000 population, which would mean in today, the city of Hemet has a population of 90,000 people. It would mean that we should have, under our contract with Measure U, we should have 108 sworn officers, and we don't have anything close to that. The ironic thing, and now we're kind of slotting into the whole Measure H issues, there's been $65 million raised since 2016. First tax payments actually came in I think April 1st of 2017. So from 2017 to date, there's been $65 million raised. And to put that in a little better perspective, that really means approximately $2,000 per household that has been given to Measure U. I mean, $2,000 per household since 2017. I mean, it's a lot of money. You got to remember, the median household income in the city of Hemet is only $43,000 a year. It's very low. And so the contract, as I kind of like to refer to it, was we're going to fund Measure U, and you're promising to give us, 108 police officers by 2019. And you're going to spend the money only on police and fire, and you're going to do several other things. Well, the city has broken that contract. It has not come anywhere close to funding. In fact, there are about the same, if not less, depending on which day of the week that you get a report from the city. There are actually less boots on the ground today than there were in 2016, in complete violation of what the city said they were going to do. So I've hopefully answered the
Well, I have
elements
I
of
have
that.
a follow-up.
Sure.
The in 2021, the payroll shows that top executives, police and fire, captains, had more overtime than they did wages. How do you figure that?
Well, there are, I mean, if you
There are
analyze,
enough feet on the ground.
you're absolutely right about that. There's been no net increase in boots on the ground. There have been a 700% increase in public safety personnel, making more than $300,000 a year in salaries and benefits. So in 2016, there were 2 public safety personnel that make more than $300,000 a year. Today, through 2021, there are 16. To answer your question about overtime, you're absolutely correct. In 2016, there was, I think, approximately $3.2 million paid in public safety overtime. In 2021, there was more than, I think, $4.5 million. There was a 40% increase in overtime. Remember, Measure U was specifically designed to add these additional people so that we wouldn't have the overtime. And of course, the thing that a lot of people don't realize is when you have this amount of overtime, it just compounds exponentially the amount of unfunded pension and medical. And that's really the major problem that's staring the city. It's just not talked about. But the unfunded pension and medical at the city of Hemet is in the, last I checked, again, it's another moving target. It was in excess of $200 million. So that's another subject that's far afield from what you asked about, but you're right. The amount of overtime has increased, I think, 30–40%. And the people making more than $300,000 a year, again, only in the public safety personnel.
It's mostly desk jobs.
Well,
at least that's the way it reads.
We know that they're not boots on the ground.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you
Eddie.
this, John. Some of the issues that I know that we were having with having so many boots on the ground too is we were having an issue with the past city manager that we had, Chris Lopez, I think his name was. He was actually not getting off his butt and signing proper contracts. Our city police were working without a contract for over 10 months, and we were losing officers on that. How do you feel, does that have a lot to do with that?
Well, all I can say is this. Where does the buck stop, Eddie?
Right.
The buck stops at the city council. The city council with 3 votes can do basically anything they want to do. Those people on the city council should have been paying attention, and I trust were paying attention. If the city manager wasn't doing what the city manager was supposed to be doing, somebody should have taken notice and objected and made him do what Measure U said he was supposed to do.
Right.
So
it just took 10 months for somebody to take action and get that thing done. Because even I know the city council did come up with an agreement that the police department and association was happy with, but it took the city manager a long time to sign the documents.
Mention the city manager. We've had about 7 or 8 city managers in the last 20 years. We can't keep a city manager.
well, we've had more than that, Rusty, but
Well, that I can remember. It goes back away.
that also goes back to what I said earlier about leadership. I don't think the city council in the past 2 or 3 iterations have had personnel that really know how to hire a proper city manager. I think I do. And I think that's why they hire people who don't work out and or either tired of being micromanaged and then leave. Right. But I think Hemet holds the record for the number of city managers in the past 10 to 12 years.
Now, going back with the Measure H and everything, I know that I see that you right now are pushing no on Measure H. And a lot of people want to know, and I asked you this before the interview, and I just want to ask you in front of everybody as well. Do some people say you have like an agenda that you want to say no to Measure H, because you want to defund our police, and you're hoping that Riverside County sheriffs will come in and take over.
No, that's absolutely not true, and I've said as much. They're using that and other scare tactics. And let me kind of divert for 1 second about the scare tactics that they're using. And we sent out a mailer that said the city of Hemet is lying to you about Measure H. Well, they are. They're saying that Measure H expires very soon, or sorry, Measure U expires very soon, and that if we don't pass Measure H, our funds are going to go away. That's absolutely not true, Eddie. We have until April 1st of 2027, nearly 4.5 years more, and 4 separate elections. We have the June primary of 24, the general of 24, the June primary of 26, and the general of 26. So 4 more elections to retool an extension of Measure U and put in there the safeguards that really should have been put in originally with Measure U. There were no performance standards. And they're treating this 10-year sunset, as Rusty mentioned early on, as something that just kind of came out of nowhere. The 10-year sunset has always been in there. It was one of the major reasons why that people were encouraged to pass Measure U back in 2016, and it basically operated as a safety valve. It basically said, if we're not doing our job, this thing is going to expire in 10 years.
Right.
And if you don't like the way it's been implemented, then you have an opportunity to retool it.
So that's basically why you're really against Measure H, is because you feel that it needs to be reconstructed.
Exactly.
It needs to be made sure that the police and fire actually get what they need out of this.
That the
correct?
city makes good on their promise, that they fulfill their contract with the voters. Taxpayers have paid $65 million.
Right.
We've held up our end of the deal. The city has not. We don't reward bad behavior with an extension of a tax measure that will then go on in perpetuity with no safeguards at all.
So where's some of this money been going to?
That's a great question. One of the provisions, as I mentioned in that Resolution 4703 that was passed at the time of Measure U, said that we have to have an annual audit. To my knowledge, there has never been an annual audit. There's a review that the Measure U Oversight Committee basically has rubber stamped, or if there's been any objections, the City Council has overruled those objections. But there's the 2 components. There's a review, and then there's an audit. Where's the audit?
Who's supposed to do the audit?
The city of Hemet.
The treasurer?
It's an independent outside auditor that's supposed to come in and do an audit of how Measure U funds have been spent.
The city council hires them.
Right.
That's exactly right. Again, where does the buck stop? At the city council.
And there's something else that we didn't mention. Speaking of management, the former city attorney took out $1.5 million before they realized he was milking the thing.
Well, that's
that money.
This is getting interesting.
That's how
over
we
here.
got a new city attorney.
Well, the city attorney has been a bit of a pet peeve of mine for a while. At Rusty, it actually is worse than that. The former city attorney was billing the city of Hemet on average about $2.25 million a year. To put that in perspective, cities like Temecula or Murrieta spend approximately $600,000-700,000 a year on a city attorney. Again, where was the leadership? I must give credit to Carly Meyer. She brought in a what's called an RFP, request for proposal. Unfortunately, Linda Krupa, who again is a nice person, but in this case, when faced with the possibility of hiring a new city attorney, Linda voted against the RFP when she was in the majority. And then when she was not in the majority, it came up again. There was a new city attorney proposed. The vote was 3-2, with Linda being one of the no votes. As of today, the city of Hemet is paying approximately $700,000 to $750,000 a year for city attorney services, a savings of several millions of dollars.
And that's a credit to Carly.
I will give that credit to Carly, absolutely. And the people, and Joe Males, and I believe Malcolm, that voted to hire this new city attorney.
That was the opposite agenda, but it's changed around a little bit since the election.
Is there a question there, Rusty?
Well, it's an implied one.
Now, how many people on the city council?
Talk about it.
5 members on this.
Five members on
Hemet
the
is a general law city, and a general law city in California has 5 city council members.
Okay. Rusty, you're thinking of some more questions. I can go ahead and throw out some community questions.
Well, we have the crime in the streets. Of course, we've sort of covered that in a backhanded way. But when you go down the street and you see people sleeping in doorways, and you go down Florida Avenue, and I assure you, you go down after midnight and you'll see them all along the street. Why isn't there someone that's out there taking those people up and keeping them overnight someplace? Now, that should be a program that would be easy, because you have all of these good do-getters here in town, the churches and everybody. It seems they could get together and provide something. We got all kinds of empty buildings in this town, and you ask the city council people, and they say, oh, we don't want to be liable.
Well, it's a complicated question and an issue.
I want a complicated answer.
Well, I can give you a complicated issue. There's a Supreme Court, California Supreme Court case. Actually, it's in another state. I believe it's Idaho. That is the Martin decision that says you really can't clean up public sidewalks until you have a homeless facility to put them in. But other cities have been very creative in how to get around that. I think I can provide the leadership to the city of Hemet on how we can get around it. You're absolutely right, Rusty. There's no excuse for people having to step around. I mean, half the time you're wondering if the person's still alive.
Yeah.
And a lot of these folks have got drug issues. There are a lot of them that are their own worst enemies and are there through other types of circumstances. But the fact remains, this is a quality of life issue for the majority of residents of the city of Hemet. And while I did praise Carly on the city attorney, I will now say that something that she has pushed that I am absolutely not in favor of is an approval that the city council had approximately, 6 months ago, where the county of Riverside has now been given the green light by the city of Hemet to build a 281-bed homeless facility, not for regular homeless, but for homeless people with psychiatric problems.
I heard about that, but you know what I don't understand? It started out, it was 100 beds. Then I heard 400 beds. Now you're saying 170 some?
No, 281.
281
is what I got from the city council meeting that was on a Friday morning at 8 o'clock. So it was a special meeting to do this approval that the county needed to get funding. By the way, the county would own it, but it would sub out the operations to a private contractor.
Well, we become kind of a cesspool for the homeless or the mentally ill.
Well, that's my problem with it. And you're right about the 281 now morphing into a larger number, because I also heard a 400 number. It's hard, again, to get the correct facts. And it's surprising to me, well, it actually isn't, because nobody has been publicizing this. Hardly anybody knows about this approval that the city council has given to this facility, and it would be able to take psychiatric patients that are homeless from all over Southern California. There's no residency requirement that you had to be a resident of the San Jacinto Valley. They are free to come and go as they want. It is fraught with all sorts of problems. There's no mandatory or maximum amount of time that one of these people can stay there. You have people that their other cities will send all of their mentally sick homeless people to Hemet, waiting for beds to come open at this facility, and I just think it's going to compound our problems enough. City of Hemet, for the last 30 years, has had Valley Restart. Valley Restart, depending on the management, has been good and bad. I think now it's actually in pretty good shape. I am the first one to say that we need to lend a helping hand to our people that are here in the Valley. But what's happened is our helping hand has been abused. we have become the dumping ground for practically every city in southwest Riverside County. I know for a fact the city of Temecula's general plan, it's not anymore, but up until about 2-3 years ago, the city of Temecula's general plan had a provision in their homeless and their housing element of the general plan that said, if you have any homeless issues, go to Hemet and see Valley Restart in Hemet. Other cities have done that. They haven't documented it in their general plans, but other cities, as we know, have dumped homeless in our valley. And it's got to stop. It's got to stop.
We're overly saturated.
We are.
But who's going to fund? Now, there's something else with that. Who's going to fund the medical staff? Because you have to have psychiatrists. It's going to require a lot of medical staff.
Well, the county of Riverside has said that there's money available, and they just want a place to do it. And they've also said it's an experiment. And my position is let them experiment somewhere else. You know, it certainly doesn't need to be. And for those of your viewers, Eddie, that don't know where this approval has been taken place in terms of the property, this is on the county has owned this property for years. This is on the west side of State Street, basically between Menlo and Oakland, I believe. And that vacant field would be the site of this homeless facility. Again, it's homeless, but not for regular homeless for people with psychiatric problems.
So while they're doing this experiment, John, let me ask you this. Are they going to experiment on what is our town going to do when these people come in from different cities into this facility? And as you already stated, you know, they can come and go as they please. If they don't like the treatment, they could just walk out, they get on our streets, and then look, we got more people on our streets now.
Exactly right. So one of the things that I have said in my candidate statement is that if the voters feel encouraged to elect me to the District 5 council seat, one of the first items on my agenda is to revisit this approval. And I believe, and I don't think he would mind my saying this, I've had conversations with Councilmember Joe Males. Joe did vote for it originally. Joe has reconsidered.
Yes, he has.
And
he told me that himself.
He told me that.
And Joe would be one who would vote yes to reverse the approval. And I believe if the voters are also inclined to elect Jackie Peterson in the 2nd district, that's over where the Four Seasons area is, Jackie has also been on record as saying that she will vote to deny the approval
Yeah, 'cause
of
a lot
this.
of people in this community is very upset about that.
Well, it's just unfortunate that it kind of slipped under the radar, and that was one of the things that really galvanized me in running for city council. I absolutely think that would be it would be a disaster for the city of Hemet, because I know we would have an influx of people, homeless people with psychiatric problems, and that's the last thing that we need right now.
Yeah, go do this in another town. We don't need to experiment here in our town. We've got enough problems.
I agree.
Go ahead, Eddie.
All right. Well, I'm going to go look at some of the questions that we have from our community, and a couple people's already asked, and we already had this issue already with Joe Males about the residency. Do you?
That was a waste of time.
Exactly, a waste of time and money, because we look.
$40,000.
We spent $40,000 to reelect him, and he still won. So why don't we just keep him in seat? So that I know we're going to probably face that problem. Some people say, "Oh, well, he has a camper out here." Does that
smell
count?
like a dead
so
skunk.
do you reside in Hemet?
Yes, I do. Let me cut to the chase on that particular issue, because unfortunately the fire union did a hit piece of mail on me, and I have responded. A lot of people got my response in the 5th district. If you live in the 5th district of the city of Hemet, you got my response hopefully in today's mailbox. And that is that I have owned the corner of, it's the southwest corner of Kimball and Carmelita in downtown Hemet since 1985, which is 37 years. Can't believe it's been 37 years, but it has. And that property was actually originally constructed in 1891. First mayor of Hemet lived in that house. I'm actually only the 5th owner, if you can believe that. Right? Rusty, that house is older than you are.
I'm just thinking.
That's old, man.
Yeah, that's really old.
That's real old.
And I have made that a project. Some of your viewers may know the Gamble House in Pasadena.
Right.
The Gamble House was built in 1908, I believe, and I've used that as a model for what I've tried to do at the corner
That's
of
what
Kimball
it's
and
looking
Cromwell.
like.
So
Well,
when you
I-
go to bed at night, you lay your head in Hemet, right?
What I did is, in order to qualify for the District 5 council race, I had to make my Carmelita property my residence. So at some sacrifice to myself, I did move in a trailer. It's on the property. I've resided there since before the nominating papers were issued to me. I can tell you right now, my residency in the city of Hemet, District 5, is not an issue.
Good. And you get mail there, right?
I get mail there, my voter registration address is there, my
You
driver's
got
license
utilities
is there. I've been paying utilities there for 10 years, or
Rest
longer.
in peace right there, then, right?
So,
That answers the
I've, done enough to know that my residency is not an issue.
Okay, well, that answers your questions there, guys and gals. And let me see what other questions we have.
And while you're looking for that, I might add that somebody has said that you're not permitted to have a trailer on single-family zone property. There's a provision in the Hemet Municipal Code that says if you have a property under construction, you're absolutely able to have a trailer there. So I'm complying with the City of Hemet Municipal Code, and I've not had any citations or any inquiries at all from the City of Hemet regarding this issue.
People spread malicious gossip, you know that.
I do, and it's unfortunate.
Let's see. I think I'm in
We got anything else over there?
Let me go back to default over here. Go ahead and ask some more questions while I'm working on these comments, Rusty.
Oh boy, that's a good thing. I'm trying to think what I could get questions on. Oh, there's been a lot of talk about unifying with San Jacinto and having a joint account, or more or less.
Well, there would be if I can anticipate the rest of your question,
Yes.
Rusty, it's called a consolidation, and I think it's an interesting concept. I think it should be explored. There could be some tremendous cost savings by consolidating the two cities.
A joint committee sort of thing.
Well, it could be. It could take several different forms.
yeah.
But I certainly think it's worth exploring. It would have to make sense on an economic basis to the city of Hemet, of course.
Well, what I don't understand, and maybe you can give me some insight on it, Beaumont, San Jacinto, they are running leaps and bounds ahead of Hemet. Why should that be if Hemet's the larger city?
It's an interesting question. Some people have said that the reason why Hemet is in such poor condition is that it's an old city, old infrastructure, and it has problems associated with its age. And I point out that the city of San Jacinto is actually the oldest incorporated city in Riverside County.
Yeah.
Their median household income is about $56,000. Their unfunded pension and medical in the city of San Jacinto is practically zero. I hate to say it, but it all comes back to leadership and the quality of people that are on the city council.
Got something else, Eddie?
Yeah, this is another question from somebody in the community. It says, just a note, according to the biography on your website, it sounds like you do want to defund the police. You want to explain that?
I don't know how anyone can say that I would want to defund the police when all I've been arguing from day one is let's get the boots on the ground that were promised under Measure U. How can anyone translate that into a defund the police argument?
And we did talk about that earlier. He is for funding the police, what I can tell. It's just right now he's against Measure H is because he feels that Measure H is not all going to go to help the public safety, that they need to actually reconstruct Measure H to make it clear that this is going to help our local police and our fire.
Remember,
not to go to road services, this
Well,
should,
it
we need a
usurps
public
Measure
safety.
U.
well,
Exactly.
remember, if Measure H fails, Measure U continues on. So there's no interruption of funding. There's, basically, I'm hoping that if Measure H is defeated, it sends a signal to the city council that says from the voters, we expect you to honor your contract. We expect the boots on the ground that were promised. How anybody, and I hate to say it, but it's unfortunate that, and I should say it this way, I don't blame our police and fire guys who go out and do hard work. I don't blame them for cashing the check. I blame the city council for not guaranteeing that the guys that are working, in fact, police guys are working shifts that are 3-day, 12-hour shifts. Why on earth aren't the police union people saying, get us the boots on the ground so we don't have to work 3 12-hour shifts? It's counterintuitive that somebody would say that I'm for defunding the police. It's an absolute opposite.
You just want to make sure the police are going to get those funds.
Exactly.
And I've noticed, like you said, that we are getting a lot of overtime. I mean, I've even seen a lot of our police officers have to work overtime because we're so short-handed. And I can say that I have seen that since Chief Poost has actually took over as city manager, he's actually been on a hiring spree and started hiring more people. But still, that's not worth this money. We got $65 million that you said that we got from the taxes on Measure U.
To date.
As of today. Where is this money going?
Well, has he hired boots on the street? Who is he hiring?
I don't know who they are. I have seen a lot of new faces on the street since I've been out covering news in the last few weeks. I've seen a lot of new officers out there.
Well, the question is, what's been happening for the last 6 years?
Right.
And that's
Why not?
that's the
Why
whole.
just take it now?
Well, because now they want to make sure that Measure U has the 10-year sunset. They want to make sure that it continues on, and they're thinking that they can get this in now before maybe there is an audit or maybe there is a homeless center for psychiatric people. I think there is an urgency to get this done before somebody gets on that council and demands answers that should have been asked, answers to questions that should have been asked a long time ago.
Right.
One more thing we haven't covered. This city for many, many years was a retirement home.
Right.
The median age was about 68. Now it's about 38. Who wants to come and bring business here when they got people practically living in rest homes, or if they think they are, they want to come to an active community where people are buying and young people are building, which we have today, but they're ignoring it.
That's a good point.
Well, but it all starts with safety. Rusty, I'm out there as an ambassador for the city of Hemet because of what I do. I do real estate development. I'm bringing tenants, commercial tenants, national tenants into the San Jacinto Valley. And I've been doing that for the last 25 years. And one of the things that these national tenants look at, and the mom and pops look at, is how safe is this community?
Yeah.
And the guys can get all the fancy equipment and everything that they want, but if we don't have control over crime and homelessness, and I use homelessness, as I said in one of my mail pieces, I think homeless is a term that is not exactly accurate. I think for the most part, we have a vagrancy issue in the city of Hemet. Yes. We have people who have chosen to be homeless, a lot of guys in their 20s walking around with backpacks on that are employable if they wanted to work, but they don't.
They rather stood out there and
hold
out their hand in signs.
That's exactly right. And these are the folks that I think we need to be focused on because they're committing a lot of crimes. A lot of it is drug induced, if you will. And I think that's the thing we need to be focused on. It's about priorities, and there's been no leadership on the city council to make those priorities start with a safer community. Once we can get that accomplished, then it's a lot easier to sell to people who want to come in and start doing new business, provided that we have a community development department that is functioning to help them get into business, which is a whole different other side of the reason why I'm running for
But
city
we're
council.
getting the Mid-Valley Parkway that going through. That will help bring business in.
That's still many, many years away, my
Yeah,
friend.
but it's been the problem. One of the problems is getting in and out.
It's true. Hemet has been called, the San Jacinto Valley has been called the cul-de-sac of Riverside County. It has had its good side of things, but it also has had its bad side of things. Transportation planning is something that should be coordinated better than it has been, in my opinion. That's another element to why I'm running. I work with the Riverside County Transportation Commission on other projects in other cities. I know how they function. I know how to make roads a priority in the city of Hemet, and I think there's, again, been a lack of leadership in that angle as well.
Well, I got two questions in one here. I got one person was asking, let me see, it just disappeared. Got some more questions coming in. Let me maximize this so I can read it better. My lazy eye. All right, let's see, where did it go? Okay, what new businesses has you developed in Hemet, and do you plan on bringing more business in town, and how? And is it the city council the ones that approve businesses to come in town?
Well, the city council approves property and conditional use permits for shopping centers, things like that. They've made some feeble attempts to go to, and this is a side issue, but there's a convention every year in Las Vegas called the International Council of Shopping Centers. I attend as a private citizen and as a real estate developer. The city council has sent city council members that really don't have a clue as to what they're doing there. It's basically a junket for 3 or 4 days in Las Vegas, and then they come back and say that they've had a bunch of meetings, but really they've been completely ineffective. Your viewer asked about what businesses I have brought in. I'll give you the most recent example. I could start actually from 1985 when I brought Winston Tire in at the Hemet Auto Center. It was my first project at 1200 West Florida Avenue. Most recently, we brought in Ulta Beauty. We brought in Burlington Coat Factory. We relocated Sprouts and Marshalls and PetSmart. That project is now probably the one of the highest grossing in terms of sales tax revenue of any shopping center in the city of Hemet. We're currently remodeling the old Kmart project.
Yeah, a lot of people have been asking about that building.
Yeah, that building is going to be used as a supermarket, and it's an 83,000 square foot building. We have a 50,000 square foot supermarket planned. We just did the McDonald's just opened last December, doing fantastic business. That's a prototype McDonald's with the dual lanes. I can tell you I was on a phone call today, and I can say that with I'm going to say 75% certainty there will be a new user between Starbucks and McDonald's, and we'll be able to make that announcement in the next, I'm going to say 30 days.
Well,
So-
definitely let us know and we'll put it up for
I
you.
will.
Okay. Let's see what else we have here. I know Stacy Olson was asking a question. We need more stores on the east side of town. Yes, we do. And do you have any plans for that for the east side of town? What's your take on that?
Nothing currently. The east side is a little more of a challenge because it's a more of a cul-de-sac effect. But retail, understand that retail is driven by rooftops, and we have some older shopping centers on East Florida Avenue. Specifically, I'm thinking of the Stanford and Florida. I don't know if the Stater Brothers is planning on staying there. I know it's one of their smaller stores. I think personally, from a business standpoint, there are some 8 to 10 acre vacant parcels on East Florida Avenue. I think with a little bit of leadership and a little bit of some aggressive marketing, you could encourage a shopping center to be built there and maybe tempt Stater Brothers to either relocate or some other market to come in and build a store there.
Now, what is your take on the hospitals? Somebody said, would you try to help bring in a Kaiser or a Loma Linda facility here in our valley?
I mean, Kaiser or Loma Linda is going to come in or not come in based on what they want to do, not what we want to do. That's up to them. I think the Hemet Hospital is a regional facility. It's got 320 beds. I think from a standpoint of serving the San Jacinto Valley, I would find it difficult to think that another hospital would come in and try and build a new facility. I can tell you that right now hospitals are costing about $1.8 million per bed because they are so complicated to construct. So it's a very tough nut to crack from an economic standpoint. But if they do, more power to them.
Now, do you know anything, or what's your intake on a Metrolink coming through our town?
Well, it's interesting. I was thinking about that just the other day. As some of your viewers may know, we've had the San Jacinto branch line terminates at the old minor Agri Empire packing shed in San Jacinto. The right-of-way is now owned by Riverside County Transportation Commission. Their last estimate that I saw to do commuter rail all the way to San Jacinto was somewhere in the neighborhood of $100 million. I think that number can be reduced significantly. If I'm elected to council, one of my primary objectives is to get with RCTC, Riverside County Transportation Commission, and figure out a way how Hemet can be fast-tracked, no pun intended, to get commuter rail to San Jacinto.
That'd be awesome. All right, so I'm going to just backtrack on this a little bit. Some people were just logging in and giving me the repeat questions about what is John's intake on defunding the police. I see that as a major concern in here. He did answer that question, Glenn. He is for supporting our police. He is against Measure H right now because he feels that Measure H will not actually be obligated to help our police. It should be dedicated to the police and fire and no other, stuff getting the money. We do need our police. We do need our fire department. But we want to make sure that if we're going to vote yes on Measure H, that we want to make sure that money is going to go to those facilities that need that money. And he would like to see Measure H reconstructed so he can guarantee that our local police and fire is going to get this money. Well, he does not want to see the police be replaced by Riverside County sheriffs. He does want to keep our Hemet police.
I do. And let me expand on that a little. Remember, it's not about Measure H. It's about enforcing the promises of Measure U. That's already in place. It's made $65 million. It's got another 4.5 years to go. It's going to have another probably $75 million by the time 2027 rolls around. And in my candidate statement, if somebody reads their sample ballot, then I think it is the first of my 3 immediate action items, if I am elected to council, is make sure that the promises of Measure U are fulfilled.
That's
and
right.
That is get the boots on the ground. And by the way, if there's a problem with the city of Hemet not being able to hire police officers, I've got a suggestion that I think would be a good one.
What's that, John?
That is, let's take advantage of the private security guys that we have in this town.
The Hemet Gatekeepers?
The Hemet Gatekeepers is a good example. A lot of people don't realize that there are 50 to 60 private security people. And I have to digress a minute because the city of Hemet promotes the crime statistics as that have gone down, that theft has gone down by a certain percentage since 2016, and touting that as a reason why Measure U has been successful. I would respectfully disagree. There have been more than 300 private security officers hired in this valley, in the city of Hemet rather, since 2016.
Right.
Repeat that.
There have been more than 300 private security officers hired since 2016. Quite honestly, they've been hired because the city of Hemet hasn't been able to do their job. They haven't done the promise of Measure U. And what's interesting is, and you used gatekeepers, so I happen to know the gatekeepers. We employ gatekeepers. The personnel at gatekeepers, 98% of those private security guys live in the city of Hemet.
That's right.
Unfortunately, according to Chief Poost, the city of Hemet, less than 25% of Hemet officers live in the city of Hemet. And when you think about all the money that's being paid to those Hemet police officers, and it's, spent outside, Gatekeepers has a payroll of approximately $2 million. That money, because 98% of them live in Hemet, is being spent in the community.
That's it.
And they are, have a vested interest in making this community as safe as possible. I would be in favor of hiring private security until we can ramp up with the city of Hemet's own forces to do immediate patrols. If anybody follows what's happened down in Oceanside, coincidentally, it's Gatekeepers who got a contract with the city of Oceanside.
Actually, Oceanside called Steve Norman and was begging him to come do the contract.
Well, I happen to know a guy that has a house. I won't mention his name, but he's actually a well-known person in the San Jacinto Valley. He lives down in Oceanside, close to the Strand, about 4 months out of the year. And I asked him the other day, how has he seen the results since Gatekeepers has come on board? And he said, absolutely amazing. They've done an incredible job. It's been very fast, a complete turnaround. So we need to think outside the box here, because Hemet doesn't have time to try this and try that and try that inside of the own city of Hemet bureaucracy, if you will. Let's do something that we know can get results immediately.
Yeah,
so
and I've talked to a lot of business owners out here that actually use the Gatekeepers, and they say that their response time is so much faster than the police. Their crime has went down in their area.
At night, if you go out after dark at night, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
I see them everywhere. They sit down where Danny's is. They got a car parked there to cover that hotel,
They're
Danny's,
in and
and
out,
that
too.
whole corner there. They're right there on the alert, ready to go, just like that.
There's no reason it can't be a collaborative effort, and I would be in favor of that. And so I just want you to know that that's one of my 3 issues, is making sure that the promise of Measure U and the boots on the ground is fulfilled immediately, one way or the other. And again, this business about my wanting to defund the police is absolute rubbish.
He just wants to make sure the police gets the
The
funds.
city could subcontract them to assist the
And
police.
they got more
That's
boots
what I'm
on
talking
the
about.
ground.
Yeah, of course.
They have more boots on the ground than RPD
I've
does.
never heard anybody on city council mention that.
It's been brought up, but it's always been declined.
Well, a lot of things get brought up at Hemet City Council, and it drones on and on and on. You'd think they'd get a lot more done.
Right. So if we vote yes for John Petty, and you get on city council, what will you do for our community? What is your plans as a city councilman?
Well, again, I say it in my candidate statement, and it's on the sample ballot. Number 1, fulfill the promises of Measure U. Number 2, essentially reinvent the community development department so that it is more business friendly, so that people don't get hassled when they come and try and start a new business here. And number 3, I can't remember if it's in that order on my candidate statement, but basically do whatever it takes to reinvent Hemet in terms of an image, in terms of how it is perceived by not only our own citizens, but citizens outside the city. Eddie, I can't tell you how many people that I meet outside of Hemet, and I'm not the only one that has had this experience, I'm sure. When you're asked, where do you live? And you say Hemet,
No, I'm sorry.
You get your yucks.
the look on their face tells it all. Oh geez, why do you live in Hemet? And of course, as I said before, I've been a goodwill ambassador for the city of Hemet for many, many years. It doesn't have to be that way, Eddie. It just takes the leadership to change the direction and change
We
the
need a
image.
change in the city council, and that's where we'll start.
Well, it's changing leadership. I talk to a lot of business people because, I'm a reporter and I get around and I talk to them. Every single one of them that I've talked to says, the city of Hemet is tough on small business. The big guys have big, expensive lawyers and they can fight back. The little guy is just stuck in between and gets trampled on. That's why I think that some small business doesn't want to come here because
And I've heard that from
there's
small
nothing,
business
there's
owners.
nothing for them.
You're absolutely right, and it's got to change, and it will change if I'm elected to the Hemet City Council.
There you go. And I got another question for you, John. I told you we're going to be throwing these balls at you over here. I got a few more questions come in.
Good.
Explain what will probably happen if Measure H is not passed. What will happen?
As I said a few minutes ago, nothing happens.
Nothing.
Measure U continues on.
Until
the funding continues on for 4.5 years. There's this argument that the city is putting out saying, well, we have to eliminate this sunset clause because we can't hire new people because they're looking at it at expiration. If we bring in a new officer, they're saying there's no funds going to be there. That's baloney.
You got
That's
$65
baloney.
million
That is
already.
baloney.
It's
Go ahead
baloney.
and
I can't
hire
see
them.
them making it with a straight face,
No.
but
They
they
could
are.
take some of that overtime and hire a few
Again,
officers.
you've got millions of dollars, at least 70 to another $75 million that's going to be generated by Measure U
Because as
before
things pick up, yeah.
2027, and 4 more elections to reauthorize Measure U.
So that's
But
what
let's
you answered.
reauthorize it properly with proper safeguards and proper performance standards. All the things that, and I should bring this up. In 2016, the business community got together and said, we got to do something because our businesses are suffering because of the crime. And Hemet just isn't able to either cut the number of expenditures that they need to cut, or for whatever reason, let's sponsor. It really was driven by the business community back in 2016. A lot of people don't realize that. And that same business group raised over $400,000 promoting Measure U, and they got it passed. And Measure U passed by, 21 points, I think. As far as I have heard, and I've checked, no one from that same business community has donated a dime to promoting Measure H. They are embarrassed about how Measure U has turned out in terms of boots on the ground. And while they don't want it to go away, they certainly are not in favor of Measure H. If you do the research, you'll find that Measure H is being promoted by the public safety unions, who, as Rusty said, have certainly been getting a lot more than we all thought they would be getting after Measure U passed in terms of overtime and in terms of salaries. Again, I don't blame them for cashing the check. I blame the lack of leadership on the Hemet City Council for allowing it to happen.
Gotcha. Now, so if Measure H don't pass, like you say, we still got 4 years of Measure U.
4.5 years.
4.5
of
years.
Measure U. Now, will there be a time to where we can reconstruct that Measure H to where
We can
you
do
know,
it.
let's-
We can do it immediately. We can do it. We can start the process
right now?
right now. We can retool and bring a different version of Measure H. I'd like to see this oversight committee. Quite honestly, right now is a bit of a joke. It's turned into political appointments. There were some very good people that were kicked off the Measure U oversight committee. So I'd like to see not the city council choosing the Measure Oversight Committee. It's kind of like the, wolf guarding the hen house.
It's a rubber stamp.
Right.
I want to do away with the rubber stamp. I want to have more independence. I'd like another body to choose the oversight committee. So there really will be. And the question is, a lot of people don't realize the oversight committee does not meet, I think, maybe twice a year.
Wow.
I think they need to be a lot more involved in watching and making sure that Measure U, the true intent of Measure U is fulfilled. So, and there are a couple of other things. I mentioned performance standards before. We've got to hold our Measure U promises in a higher position that they've been under because they've
whatever
completely been
form,
breached.
Right, in whatever form it takes, as long as they uphold it.
That's correct.
So if we're going to take a tax measure, we need to have that dedicated just for Hemet Fire and Hemet Police.
It already is,
Nothing
Eddie.
else.
It
Nothing
already
else.
is. That's the companion resolution that I referred to earlier. Again, Google City of Hemet Resolution 4703. I'm pretty sure that's it. It says it right there. It says you're not going to spend this money on anything else. The other thing that I think your viewers need to know is Measure U was not meant to be a replacement for the money from the general fund that was funding public safety.
It's an addition to it.
It's an addition. Without the audit, we don't know if it's been done as a replacement or as an addition. Remember, the City of Hemet's public safety budget comprises about 75% of the overall City of Hemet budget. That's the highest of any city in Riverside County. So there has to be this independent audit. That's called for, by the way, in this resolution that was passed back in 2016. 4703 says there will be an independent audit every year of how Measure U funds have been spent. Hasn't happened. Another breach of the contract with the citizens of Hemet.
If you go to city council meetings, that's brought up from time to time, and of course the city council doesn't comment on citizens' protests. They just push them along. And I've never heard them really answer much of anything.
I never got an answer out of them either.
Yeah, they walk around the elephant in the room.
Well, I can tell you this. Those days are over if I'm on the Hemet City Council.
There you go. What does the Hemet emergency have to do with what we're talking about? Don't understand what your question is on there.
What emergency? It's all emergency.
What does the Hemet emergency have to do with what we're talking about? Well, the Hemet emergency, the police, the fire, Measure U is supposed to help us put more police on the ground and more fire people on the ground. So it's got, I think, everything to do with it, right?
Well, emergency is a relative term, but I would say, quite honestly, there is an emergency in our community. There's an emergency of crime. There's an emergency of homelessness.
It's all
vagrancy. I think people have become cynical because they don't see any changes happening. Again, they upheld their part of the bargain by passing Measure U. The city of Hemet has not, in my opinion. And when I talk to people in the precincts of the District 5, I'm getting a lot of people who think the same thing.
Right. And I don't know if I may have asked the question, I might have, let me see, Hemet PD retention problem. What do you see a lot of the money that's went, where did it go with Measure U?
Well, that's the thing. I don't want to
Nobody
sound like a
knows.
broken
Nobody
record,
knows.
but we need that audit. And quite honestly, I'm not going to wait for an annual audit. If the voters decide that I am the guy for the job for District 5, one of the things what I will call for is not only an audit, but a forensic audit. I want somebody that every year the budget is audited by an auditing firm. I would not use that firm. I would bring in a new firm, and I would make sure that there's a forensic audit done, and within, I'd say, 3 to 4 months, we will be able to report to the taxpayers of Hemet exactly where that Measure U money has been spent.
So we need that audit. So wasn't there, Rusty, am I incorrect about there was like $20 million misplaced somewhere one time?
I heard that, but I don't know.
No, let's not.
That's just town
Hearsay.
gossip.
Yeah.
You know, you don't know what the source was.
Without an audit, we don't know.
We're not
right?
going to know without an
and
audit.
without knowing the source, because anybody can put anything out on social media, and you just have to stick to the facts.
The other thing that the City Council has done is they've taken some of that Measure U money and put it in a reserve account. Well, I don't think we need a reserve account. I think Measure U was meant to be spent on boots on the ground, and it needs to be spent on boots on the ground now.
Right.
Why do we have a reserve account? If the community keeps going like it's going,
We got more money coming in every
But
time people.
well,
this-
not
buy
only that,
stuff.
but what are we going to use a reserve account on? A lot of people are moving out of Hemet. A lot of people don't want to come to Hemet. Back to your question just now, we do have an emergency, and I think it's maybe not the awkward question that I thought it was. I think it's an appropriate question,
Right.
and I think we need to treat it as an emergency, and our priorities need to reflect that, not on putting money into a reserve account, but by hiring guys that go out there and clean up our streets.
You see, before Measure U, we had the budget for the police department. This is a supplement to that,
Right.
and it is to add more boots on the ground. It's not something that is going to be there to interfere with what we already have. It adds to it, and sometimes these people on the city council and the people that are against, that want this other measure, don't seem to understand it. They have a purpose in the back of their mind. We'll get salaries, and this and that and the other, but still no boots on the ground.
Well, there's at least $1.2 million that we know of that has been diverted from Measure U to balancing the budget. Completely unrelated public safety issues. That was documented in a report done by the state auditor as a follow-up. I don't know, some of your readers or some of your viewers may know
Yeah.
that approximately 2000 and let's see, I think this
State
was
audit?
2016, somewhere in there. The state auditor placed Hemet, along with just a handful of other cities in the entire state, on essentially a critical watch list, which meant that if you were on that list, you were looked at by the state auditor of California as being in dire straits and in jeopardy of going bankrupt. So Hemet was on that list, and as a follow-up report, I think issued maybe 2 years ago, that the state auditor said, you didn't make the promise, you haven't fulfilled the promises of Measure U, and you've diverted this money away from public safety. That is something that you should not have done. So the city of Hemet was admonished by the state auditor
I remember
for
that.
diverting money from Measure U funds. And there's no excuse for it.
Streetlights too. That's another thing people are bringing up. We need more streetlights in our town.
Well, I can
Especially
tell you
on
that
Florida and Hamilton.
Oh, you going anywhere off of Florida Avenue, you go, it's dark. I mean, you can't see it. If somebody's wearing dark clothes, you can't see them in front of you.
Oh, look how many vehicles versus pedestrians.
Yes.
Well, the public safety, the public works budget and the priorities of public works, I think, needs to be looked at. I would also do that. I can absolutely tell you that on Carmelita Street between Kimball and Acacia, there are 0 streetlights.
Yeah, right, exactly.
And that's a part of public safety.
Yeah.
It's part of public safety. So no argument there.
John said that one. Let's see what else we have. And talking about some of the Measure U money, where it has gone. I did notice that Hemet PD was able to actually bring in 2 good utilities into our town with some of this Measure U money, and that is the flock cameras. We now have 101 flock cameras throughout our town. That has helped them recover so many stolen
We have
cars.
one down to Derby.
Yeah, we got it everywhere.
Yeah.
And they now just implemented a new device in our town, and this is, I think, was very cool. They haven't activated it yet, but they're probably going to be activating it probably next week or so.
Well, it will be very effective because everywhere it's been used, it's been effective.
It has.
Yes.
Now think about this. How many calls do you think Hemet Police Department gets on a daily basis at night?
Oh,
Gunshots or fireworks?
thousands, I'm sure.
Thousands of them.
Yeah.
They now have a device set up in the town. They're all over the city of Hemet. There's like, I think, 98.
I'm sure
to
those
100.
officers hate those midnight shifts.
I know, right? But they now have a listening devices set up throughout the town where if there's a gunshot or there's a firework,
It'll pick it up.
listens, it picks it up, and it determines if it's a gunshot or firework, and it notifies the PD. So that's a new thing that they're getting ready to activate.
And that's great, but we need the boots on the ground
We
to
do
respond.
need the boots to respond to them.
Big
exactly.
brother is watching you, isn't he?
Yes, he is. But
The
we just
prob-
need more brothers on the ground.
Yes.
Again, the promise of Measure U back in 2016 was an immediate hiring of 39 new police officers.
And we lost more officers than what we
Well,
gained.
all I can tell you right now is that we have the same amount of officers today that we had in 2016.
2016, yeah.
And you can show those numbers online too. It's
Yeah.
Well, they're
public record.
It's a fact. And by the way, in the mail that we've sent out, we've tried to stay, and I think we have stayed, very factual. We've cited our sources. In fact, the one mail piece, we cited the Transparent California. You can go online, any of your viewers can go online and Google Transparent California, City of Hemet, payroll, and they can see all the information there. They can also Google the State of California Auditor report for Hemet, and they'll see the reports that the state auditor has done for Hemet as well.
And you have a website that people can actually go to check.
electjohnpetty.com. Encourage anybody to go on that website and read my material and send me an email. I'm an open book. Any more questions, Eddie?
All right, let's see. I don't. Anybody else have any more questions? Speak now or forever hold your peace. Rusty, do you have any more questions?
No, I think it's been a very interesting discussion, and I think you brought up some things that I hadn't even thought of.
Well, That's a compliment.
Right? Rusty normally thinks of everything. So.
Well, Eddie, again, I wanted to thank you for doing this.
I'm just sorry Linda didn't come.
Well, I know she was
Linda,
invited.
it was a short notice. I asked
Yeah.
her, just a couple hours prior, but
Yeah,
she
she probably
does
had
want to
something
do
else.
something, and
Yeah.
We can always have John come back whenever Linda's
Whatever's needed.
available.
And I am sorry that the police and fire union representatives decided that they didn't want to be here. I think it would have been a spirited debate, and I looked forward to it. But
It would have been interesting.
unfortunately, it didn't happen. But I think the voters have got enough information on,
Well, you
on
showed
the
up.
issues.
That's important.
Well,
That's it.
like I said, anytime, anywhere.
So do you have Facebook?
I do have a Facebook page for my candidacy. I'm generally not a Facebook social media guy, but for the campaign, I do have a Facebook campaign site.
All right, so you can follow the actioninews.com page and answer
Yes.
any questions that may come up after our live stream.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Happy to do it.
All right. Well, if Rusty, you don't have anything else to say,
I have
think
nothing
I'm
else
done
to
with
say.
My questions.
The election's just a few days away,
November 8th.
and we will know.
We hopefully will know.
Well, we'll know one way or the other. Well, you're
Maybe
right.
not
We may
November
not
8th,
know for a
right.
week.
But that's
All right. And anybody in my message box don't have any more questions either. So I think we're done here. And
All right.
John, I definitely
Eddie,
appreciate you
appreciate
coming.
it, sir. Thanks so
Anytime.
much.
Pleasure having you here.
Rusty, always a pleasure.
Yeah,
Rusty.
me
Thanks so
too.
much.
I can't believe Rusty got quiet all of a sudden with all of his questions. But you know how it is.
I didn't get quiet at all. I asked all kinds of questions.
So continue following us on Facebook. We will announce when we do try to get Linda Krupa in. I'd like to be able to give her side and let her have the opportunity as well as the incumbent, be able to give her campaign speech as well.
It would
We wanna
really be
here for
nice to see
everybody.
the two of them together.
Yes, we would love to do that. That way
Yeah.
we can see who's going to be best for the job. I'm not pushing for John. I'm not pushing for Linda. I'm just here giving my platform for everybody to speak. So until then, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you on the next one. I am that crazy guy.